I guess I'm trying to be as specific as I can with this one because if I do this one right, if I explain this as best I can to whoever's listening, even if you don't agree or believe what I'm saying, at least you'll understand why I'm saying it and you'll understand why I give the advice that I'm giving. And when it comes to energy, I just think it's something that can be explained pretty easily. And I can explain my theory of the universe and my theory of everything with using one thing, and that's the periodic table. The periodic table is a list of chemical elements. And each one of those elements can be dwindled down even more into atoms. And those atoms are atoms of energy, these kind of points in space that we can't even imagine how small they are. They're points of positive, negative, and neutral particles. They're neutrally charged particles. And so everything that you see, whether it's the wall in front of you, your hand, your phone, the air in between you and the wall, everything is energy. Everything is made up of it. As you start from that base level of everything being energy, you go up a level to everything being some chemical element or another. And then you go up another level and you start to see those chemical elements engage with each other and create different things like oxygen, like water, like trees, like humans, like teeth, like hair, like people, like plants, like everything. It's pretty basic. And I've seen a lot of shows about the universe, and I've read books about the universe and about physics, and they all kind of hint at this, but it's not necessarily explained in this way of what it actually means that everything is energy. It's kind of seen as this phrase that people think is kind of woo-woo or mystical, but if you take it quite literally, it can help you explain everything. Even in the things that I like to talk about, like manifestation, like Reiki, like trauma, like anything that we can talk about here, I can take it back to this foundational idea that everything is energy. And it's the periodic table that can explain that the most. Because you can look at a periodic table and you can see hydrogen. Well, you can't see it, it's a gas. But you can see hydrogen listed on the periodic table, and you can run tests to see where in the universe, where on the planet hydrogen exists, right? But hydrogen is a chemical element with an atomic number of 1. Every chemical element listed on the periodic table has an atomic number. That atomic number is related to how many protons, electrons, and sometimes neutrons that it has. And for every proton it has the equal amount of electrons. So as you're looking at that and seeing these like collection of particles go from 1 electron, 1 proton, 1 neutron, which is hydrogen, to 2 electrons, 2 protons, 2 neutrons, which is whatever the next chemical element is, right? I can't think of it right this second. I think is it lithium? Helium? You add one more and one more and one more, and you get the entire list of elements. That's how it's created. Well, that's how the list was created, by looking at what the things around us are made of. But fundamentally, it's that atomic number. It doesn't really matter if it's 1, 10, or 100. It all is comprised of, first, those positive, negative, and neutrally charged particles, which are particles of energy. And that's it. That's like the basic explanation of that. Now, if you get into quantum physics, it does get a little more, it gets complicated, but that's a whole nother level. But if you can understand energy and the existence of the things around us in the context of energy, you start to ask different questions that you wouldn't normally. And if you want to know more about this, there's a book that is written by Sabine Hossenfelder called Existential Physics. I actually have it right here. It's called Existential Physics, A Scientist's Guide to Life's Biggest Questions. This book is incredible, and like the title says, it's a scientist's guide, so there are words in here that you will have to look up if you really want to understand it. But this book basically talks about what I'm talking about. And I think if you can understand that level of existence, you don't need something outside of you, or you don't need this kind of religious explanation to understand what's going on in the world. That's another topic for another time, but I think if I can get you to understand that everything is energy, it can shift how you look at the world, how you look at yourself, how you look at how you create, how you manifest, how you wish, pray, whatever you want to call it, how you exist in the world. And you start to find this kind of solidarity in yourself, because you start to understand what you're actually made out of, and how that understanding can help you thrive instead of rely on something outside of yourself to reach your highest potential or reach your goals, or just find a day to be happy, you know? Everything is energy. Every single thing is made out of some sort of chemical element, which is made out of some sort of combination of positive, negative, and neutrally charged particles. So what does that mean? What can you do with that information? Like I said, the book is there if you want to read it. There's a whole bunch of other sources. I'm sure if you look up Everything is Energy and look up book, you can find a lot of people talking about this in different ways. But the way I'm explaining it with the idea of the periodic table was helpful for me to really logically and tangibly understand what it is I'm saying, instead of just living this idea of, yeah, everything's energy and everything, go with the flow, and what's the vibe and what's the frequency. Well, that all makes sense because everything is energy. Auras make sense because everything is energy. Magnetic fields make sense because everything is energy. Shifting vibes, astrology, the way the universe was formed can all be explained with this idea that everything is energy. And it's the coolest fucking thing. And I guess my hope is just to quickly explain that in the quickest way so that we can move past that and start to ask ourselves, what do we do with that information? Because once you start to understand that everything is energy and that you are energy, you start to understand, actually you start to look at yourself as energy, this sack of energy of atoms, and you start to wonder, how do you control your energy? How do you control your reality? How do you control, or better question is, what can you control by understanding that everything is energy? Ultimately, the answer to that is just yourself and your reality in some way. And of course, that plays into everyone else's understanding of what their reality is. But a few years ago, I just went through this, we'll call it awakening, but this kind of depression that led to this wanting to understand and be less of a victim in my own life and understand how I find my power in it. And it led to all of the things that I've learned. And the things that I kept repeating were, everything is energy, you are the universe, and your thoughts have power. And if you can understand that everything is energy, you can understand that you are the universe. Because if everything is energy, if Jupiter is energy and so are you, and both of those exist in the universe, then you are the universe. And if you can understand that the neural pathways that you create by the thoughts that you have, by the way that you want to live your life, and by the vibe and frequency that you want to live at, again, because your energy is vastly influenced by the way that you think, then you can understand that your thoughts have power. And again, if you can understand any of that, the deeper question is, what can I do with it? I would love to, my hope is, can we move on from that, right? Can we move on from everything is energy? Quickly understand it, because there's so much more that goes into this that can really help you shape the way your life plays out, and your understanding of the world, and your reliance on external validation from anything. You learn to find that power in yourself by first understanding that everything is energy. And maybe that's not the only way that you can do that, but it is the way that I was able to do that, where I completely disregard everyone else's, whether they are humans or any other entity that anybody else may have worshipped. I completely disregard any of that, because my solemn belief in who I am and what we are and how we interact with the world is so strong that it empowers me to think differently and to smile in a world that tells me I shouldn't be smiling, and to see hope in a world that tells me there is none, and to see love in people who continuously show me that they are completely void of it. But that's where the power is. And it's a cool fucking thing. So again, everything is energy, and that can be explained by the periodic table, which is a list of chemical elements. And if you want to learn more about that, simply look it up. Or a book that I can recommend is called Existential Physics, A Scientist's Guide to Life's Biggest Questions by Sabine Hossenfelder. She also has a YouTube channel. This book is incredible, and it was exactly... I remember, like, learning about, like, basically putting patterns together, and I'm a very logical person, looking at different pieces and smashing them together and coming up with this conclusion, but I wanted more. I wanted to know more about it, and I randomly came across this book, and I knew it was exactly what I wanted. I couldn't afford to buy it, so I got like a trial for an audiobook and listened to the entire thing, and then bought the book, and have read it once. I'm halfway reading it again, and I think I'm just going to restart it because, you know, I need to. I know the first part of it is pretty... like, there's a lot of words that you need to... you don't necessarily need to, but you'll want to look up and understand. But it's exactly the message and the confirmation that... not that I needed to hear, but that makes me feel that what I'm saying now is valid and is true. And even if it's true to me, and only me, that's okay too. You know, like I said, my assuredness comes from my beliefs now, and my belief in who I am and what I am and who we are and what we can be. And all that I ask is that if you disagree, or that if you have any questions, that you look for the answers. You can find what you're looking for, but you actually have to look. I mean, first you have to know that you need to look. A lot of us think we already know everything. But start looking. And I know a few years ago I was trying to start a YouTube channel, and I was so afraid of you know, maybe I kept thinking to myself, like, what if I'm wrong? What if I make a YouTube channel and I'm wrong? And I guess that's part of the research, right? Like, I started looking up ways that I would be wrong, and I couldn't find anything that I felt was actually legitimate. And again, we're all on this journey to find those answers. Sometimes we'll find exactly what we're looking for. Sometimes we'll find the confirmation that we're looking for, whether it's what I believe or what somebody else believes. But stepping out of that comfort zone and just trying to understand life in a different way, trying to understand nature, trying to understand the universe, trying to understand my thoughts, trying to understand myself. If you let it, that path can lead you to some really cool places. And it can help you understand more about how you want to show up in the world and what changes you might want to make. So I leave that to you to find out.